Wow. Well, that was certainly
well
something
done.
else.
That was well done.
That was incredible. I feel like we got to do a TikTok dance to that or something. Like that's the next wave. Y'all, Tim, you on TikTok?
No.
Okay. We got
You will not see me on TikTok.
We
got to get you on there, man.
Well, yeah, all right, we'll talk.
All right. Well, we have some basketball breakdowns on Snapchat and TikTok with Tim Legler here. Jay Williams joins me here. We're going to get into some Lakers talk because the Lakers caught a rough look last night as they coughed up a 26-point lead and took an L to the youngest team in the league, in the OKC Thunder, who came into that game with an 0-4 record. Now, the Lakers were without LeBron James, but with 4 other future Hall of Famers and proven veterans on the roster, the inability to close this game out was eyebrow-raising, to say the least. So, in addition to all of this, Russell Westbrook, he notched a pseudo-quadruple-double with 10 turnovers. Not done yet. He was also ejected at the very end of the game with frustrations visibly mounting. So, Tim and Jay, what do you make of all of this? What did we learn about the Lakers in this loss?
So I'm not going to sit up here and be a person, legs, that goes, the Lakers are done. That's not, we both look at basketball throughout the entire lens of how the game is being played. But I've had some conversations over the last several days with some younger players in the league, which is kind of shocking to me because I never heard people say this about a LeBron James team, where they don't find the Lakers intimidating at all. People are actually excited about playing this team. And then when you actually start, I was at the Nets game last night, but I came back home and I'm actually watching the Lakers game for a minute. I'm like, man, seeing how they defend, seeing how they play, the lack of urgency, that last minute and a half of the game, that was almost embarrassing to watch how they actually tried to execute some things. And I think that's more revealing to me than anything. Now, granted, LeBron James hasn't played, but if that's Cameron Payne talking trash to him, I think there's a level of players looking at them and saying, we don't really respect the Lakers. Even though they got a championship, this team is older. They don't play with a sense of urgency. And, yeah, they could turn on here and there, but maybe they won't. And maybe a team like OKC, the youngest team in the league last night, beats them at home, and they're having fun on the basketball court. I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
Having fun, smiling, young players smiling, playing against the Lakers. That's shocking to me.
And I can see why, because you think, as a player, and Jay, I know you'd agree with this, what makes you uncomfortable is pressure, people in your face dictating to you where you can go on the court, physicality. There's none of that with the Lakers. So when you play them, you feel like we can run what we want. Everybody's going to get numbers tonight. So that speaks to your point of why teams aren't afraid of them. But what I saw last night, at the end of that game, okay, they're down 3 different times. Now, I don't have as much of a problem with Carmelo's shot because now it's deep into the game. You don't have much time. And that was probably the worst inbounds pass maybe in the history of basketball. A bullet 25-footer from out of bounds right to Carmelo Anthony's pocket. He just didn't execute the shot. But those other 2, those were both out of timeouts, down 3 with a ton of time on the clock. And you chose out of a timeout to go to a Russell Westbrook pull-up 3 followed by a Malik Monk pull-up 3 with all the time in the world to execute, get to the rim, cut it to 1, play the foul game, extend the game, what you normally do. But I think the league is so obsessed with the three-point shot that now the mentality is that you have to get a 3 to tie it with all that time on the clock. And what it showed me was lack of poise. It showed not a very high basketball IQ. Now, LeBron wasn't out there, and obviously that elevates your IQ collectively. IQ was terrible. They added a bunch of veteran guys, Jay, to what you just said that I think were brought in for the postseason. Therefore, the regular season is just not going to be prioritized. Now, the problem with that is last year you would think they would have learned their lesson. They had some injuries, but they also preserved guys. And they thought, man, we can come out of the 7 hole. We got AD and LeBron. You're not doing that in the Western Conference. So all that talk about as long as they're healthy on April 15th, it doesn't matter where they're at, I disagree with. You're not going on the road in this Western Conference and winning 3 straight series, because in one of those series, you're going to lose the first 2 road games, and you're not going to win 4 out of 5. So I think the mentality around regular season doesn't matter. We blew a 26-point lead to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are a bottom feeder in this league. To me, that's concerning, just the overall mentality of this roster and the way that they played down the stretch of that game. They did not get smarter in the offseason. And you saw it last night, and that's one of the worst losses we've seen in the league this year.
I'll just say one last thing. So when Darius Bazley steals the ball at the end, and they're down 5, which is I don't care what anybody says, man. 4 or 5 seconds left. It's a legitimate basketball play. Could he have pulled it out? Sure. But I think that was a very big sign. Russell Westbrook being pissed off by that.
Yeah.
Being angered by that, getting ejected by that. That's how teams view them, right? Like, oh, I can steal the ball. Let me go ahead and flush you real quick. Because that's how they feel when they play against the Lakers.
Yeah.
They feel like, oh, we can do these type of things. And I like that Russell was like, no, that's not the right way you do it.
You liked Russell Westbrook's response there, that he got upset at the end of the game.
I need to see a pulse from this team. Like, I know we're at the beginning stages of the season, but I want to see a pulse psychologically that we are going to fight. And sometimes I feel when LeBron James is not on the court, there's a lot of questions around what this team does offensively. And one of the key losses that nobody talks about, Legs, when you lose Jason Kidd to the Dallas Mavericks, all the conversations I would hear from the Lakers camp about conversations between LeBron James and Jason Kidd, how they felt like they were on the same wavelength offensively with how they would scheme for different things. Now you have to make a bet on LeBron James and Russell Westbrook figuring that out, because Frank Vogel is known for being more of a defensive-minded coach, which opens up a whole other conversation, because defensively, they're not good. They're ranked 25th defensively in the league right now. So this is going to put a lot of pressure on Frank Vogel from a coaching perspective.
And you look at the Lakers' wins already so far. I mean, even against the Spurs, it took them to overtime. Or you look against the Grizzlies, it took some missed free throws from Ja to kind of get them out of that game or get them a chance to get the win. And you talk about needing to see a pulse. Russ gets a tech, or it's Dwight Howard and AD. Certainly there's some kind of emotion being shown, but I think to the word you used earlier, it's not joyful.
No.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
There's emotion, there's a pulse, but it's like, it's not fun yet for these veteran guys. And for me, Legs, I feel what was most disappointing was they couldn't stop the bleeding in letting go of a 26-point lead. And you've got all these veteran guys. It's exactly the type of group you would think shouldn't make that kind of mistake or should know how to close out a game. So at what point this season, are you willing to say, I'm starting to feel concerned? Right now, we're like, it's early, they're veteran. What point would you be concerned with these types of things mounting?
We're 25 games in. We're still talking about this kind of stuff. Blowing leads, not beating teams that you clearly have to beat, particularly a team that's going to win probably 20 to 25 games in the Thunder. That's what they're going to do this year. To not be able to close that deal after getting that big lead. If this is still going on, 15, 20 games from now, and they still haven't worked out the dynamic between Russell Westbrook and LeBron, because I still think that is going to take a lot of time to figure out. How does Frank Vogel stagger their minutes enough so that Russell Westbrook can stay true to himself, who he is as a player, and impact the game the way he's used to? Now, obviously, you're going to have to close the game with both guys. So that's a whole nother issue. One possession games, last 5 minutes. What's Russell Westbrook's role offensively? That's going to come. But in the meantime, what about the first 42 minutes? You've got to figure out how to stagger that. So this, to me, major work in progress. I'm not even remotely close to saying, oh, man, was I wrong about the Lakers? We're not there yet. Every team in this league right now is a work in progress, except, I think, Milwaukee. I think that's the closest thing to we know what they are. Everybody else is trying to figure all these things out. The Lakers at the top of the list.
Frank Vogel certainly has his hands full. All right, let's take it from the Lakers and go to the East Coast and take a look at the Nets. You were at the game, Jay Will. Last night, the Nets lost to the Heat at home, 106-93. And while Kyrie